President-elect Donald Trump has been quickly filling high-profile positions in his cabinet. His pick for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. While he's a decorated military veteran, questions have been raised about his level of experience and some comments he's made about policies he believes the armed forces should remove.
So if anyone on the Democratic side or anyone who cared about liberty or justice was thinking, well, maybe Matt Gaetz will screw this up and that'll give us some time. No, Pam Bondi knows what she's doing. She knows what she's doing about immigration. Remember, Florida is one of those states that's been very aggressive about migrants and deportation and moving people to different states and everything else like that. Florida has enacted all sorts of rules and laws to curtail students and what they can do on campuses and finding legal justifications for manipulating education money. She is a dangerous and effective pick.
All right, we saw last week with the Gaetz pick, some trouble, a little bit of trouble there, a little bit of headwinds with the United States Senate. So Pam Bondi coming in as the Attorney General pick. But on the news side, the question, though, is of all the nominees, we've got Pam Bondi, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and of course, Bobby Kennedy. Big questions loom. Can they get to 50+1 votes? Matt Boyle, you're in the counting votes game. What say you?
Yeah, Jack, thanks for having me. I think that most of these nominees are looking good. The ones you just mentioned there, I would say minus Pam. I think Pam's going to get confirmed, no questions asked. I think that will be a pretty smooth sailing confirmation. But as for Hegseth, Tulsi, and RFK, those are the only question marks really out there at this point on confirmation. Look, it's typical that an incoming president loses one or two, right? Like, so the Gaetz thing, I wouldn't get too down about that. That's just like the normal tit for tat back and forth between the U.S. Senate and the incoming president. If you go back to Trump, when Trump was coming in the first time, I remember there were one or two that went down and you don't even remember their names, right? Like same thing at the beginning of Biden, right? Like at the beginning of Biden, remember Neera Tanden? She never made it, right? Like as OMB director. But I think that the vast majority of these folks are going to get through without problem. It's a 53-seat majority in the U.S. Senate, of course, thanks to Pennsylvania, David McCormick going over the top. That makes it a lot easier than 52 because then, your Susan Collinses and Lisa Murkowski's can't stand together with one other senator and stop them from going through. They need to get a little gang together to block any nominations. And so I think things look pretty promising for most of these nominees. Things are looking very up for Pete Hegseth for the Pentagon. I think after the Gaetz withdrawal, things seem to be going very smoothly for him as he's meeting with Republican senators and really winning them over. That's no surprise. I mean, Pete, you and I both know Pete. He's a good guy. And frankly, I think that he is somebody that the senators want to like, right? Like they can get along with him. And he's somebody who brings big ideas to the Pentagon. Definitely an outsider, right? Like, so the deep state doesn't like these folks. They don't like Tulsi Gabbard. They don't like Pete Hegseth. They don't like RFK. But the fact is that I think that each of them has a very clear, easy pathway towards confirmation. They've got to do the work, though, right? They got to answer the questions. They got to be prepared. They got to have great confirmation hearings. They got to meet with senators. But as this process plays out, I think things are looking up for President Trump's cabinet, which, by the way, frankly, is the most diverse cabinet we've seen from a modern president, period, right? Like, I mean, look at the diversity of thought across the Trump cabinet. It's really exciting, actually, right? Like from RFK and Tulsi to Pete Hegseth to Pam Bondi, I think is a really strong pick. Scott Bessent for Treasury is a really strong pick as well. He'll be the highest ranking openly gay official ever in American history. Look at all these women that President Trump has brought in, right? So all these people that across the establishment media, the left, the Democrats, even some establishment Republicans who are attacking Trump, claiming he's racist or sexist or anti-gay or something like that, they're just wrong, right? Like, look at the personnel with policy, and President Trump has brought together an excellent team here.
Well, and it, as well too. I mean, going back to Pete Hegseth, as you say, people at first were a little shocked just at the novelty, I think, of the pick. It wasn't someone that was on anyone's short list. It was someone that, something that he hadn't even, and some of these other ones, like, okay, so RFK or Tulsi, right, they were part of the campaign. So everyone knew that they would more than likely be involved in some way. Whereas Pete Hegseth was just like, boom, what? Had no idea that he was even in the mix for this, and all of us. But if, keen-eyed observers will remember, or longtime followers of Human Events Daily will remember, that his name was brought up once or twice during the first administration, the 45 administration, for VA secretary with President Trump. But when it comes to Pete Hegseth, this is a guy who, and yeah, I know Pete, we've had him on the program here. He's constantly talked about how the United States military needs to get back into shape. It needs to get back into warfighting shape. We need to get rid of wokeness, get rid of DEI. At President Trump, we know it's been reported that he's already looking at another basically executive order, basically reauthorizing his earlier order, reaffirming it that trans would not be able to serve in the military, which, by the way, completely support. Look, and I'll just say this, and I remember saying it at the time, there's lots of reasons that people aren't allowed to serve in the military. You can't join the military if you have asthma. You can't join the military in some cases if you have like bad credit scores. Single parents have trouble joining the military, et cetera, criminal record, all of these various things that cause problems for someone joining in, or if you don't have your medical records in order, all of these things. So the idea that you'd put someone in who's going through transition, who's going through all of these various hormones and schedules and procedures, no, it just doesn't make sense, because what Pete is doing and what Pete wants to do is bring back a military that looks like the type of military that actually used to fight and win wars. And I got to tell you something, Matt, so outside of the Senate, right, whenever I talk to people who are active duty, or when I talk to veterans, they go, oh yeah, Pete Hegseth. I love that guy. I want that guy as the Secretary of Defense, because number one, they know that he will not be afraid of who he has to piss off to actually get the job done and accomplish that mission. I mean, when we went from a guy who looked like Mark Milley, I mean, come on, right?